Hi, and welcome to Zeno Labs Live, the new live video series from travel booking and expense management provider Serko, where we feature subject matter experts on various topics across the corporate travel industry. I'm Tony DeSalvo, and today I'm joined by Suzanne Neufang, Executive Director, GBTA. Welcome, Suzanne, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tony.
Today, I'm going to turn the tables a little bit on you, Suzanne. GBTA, as we all know, anybody who's in the industry knows, does a great job of surveying their members, doing research, and interviewing business travel executives from across the globe. But today, we're going to ask the new executive director some questions about the association and how it's doing. So if you're up for that, let's get down to it.
Let's go.
All right. So the new board was seated on July 20th. Some new faces, some holdovers. How's the transition going?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Denise Trousseau, who's the newly elected board president, and I have been working pretty closely in the last couple of weeks on some matters at hand. Mark Crucieri, who's the new VP elected from UBS, also has been engaged with us on some other work. And the board is getting lined up really with the fall and winter schedule of regular meetings. So I would say it's business as usual. I think that this will be a very engaging group and a good balance really of returning and new members. And really what I think has us all excited is that for the first time there's voting members from other countries, not just the United States. And so the perspective of global travel, the insights, their inputs will really help drive the mission of GBTA and our industry forward.
Excellent. Very good to hear. Some stability, but some new blood, right? Always good to shake things up a little bit. All right, let's talk a little bit about GBTA, the association. We've talked and read and heard about getting back to the office. How about you guys? What's the plan? Are you guys back in the office?
Officially not yet, because like other companies, we're really pulling our staff, and thanks to COVID cuts and some other departures, we have even fewer people who are within commuting distance from the office. And so we're keeping close tabs on them. A couple of weeks ago, we did have an in-person meeting where I got to meet for the first time several of my people that I've been working with for 5 months. We had the US team there. And it just reinforced again how important face-to-face meetings are. We had a full day, post-it notes, stand up, fill the whiteboards with all kinds of ideas. And that kind of thing is just really hard to do during this kind of mediated Zoom calling and other kinds of.
I hear, and coming on board, 5 months in and not having met anyone in person, just, challenge. So hats off to you for the first meeting, and hopefully there's a lot more coming real quick.
Yes.
All right. I read with some interest that CWT came back in as a member, which is obviously good news. But I've also heard from some individuals and companies that are still kind of staying on the sidelines, right? They're not ready to commit back to GBTA. Do you think they're waiting for more evidence of change? And if so, what kind of change? Do you think the elections will help? Or do you think this is a matter of simply, needing more time, and that time will heal the wounds?
Yeah, one of the first things I did when I arrived was to go on this listening tour really across the world, not just across the country. And I'm taking that feedback forward with me to instill more positive change. And I think that along with the amendment changes that went to the bylaws in the spring, the election, which was, I don't think I've ever had 24 people running for board seats at the same time. So that kind of, I would say, enthusiasm is pushing us forward, I think, with some great momentum. And we are committed to transparency and a member-centric approach in a way that, maybe we haven't had recently. And this period of time has been a huge amount of change and flux for the industry, for the association, and we've still been able to achieve some good things. I think our focus right now is getting the industry back up and running. And of course, time heals the others of that as we work to get the industry back up and healthy again, which is really our first mission, to make sure members' careers are alive and well, and that our industry is thriving in the case of, pandemics and economic woes that we just have to get over.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the conference in November. Postponed a couple times. I read through the COVID-19 response and protocols and the steps you're taking, both you and Convention Center in Orlando are taking to create a safe environment, and they're literally extraordinary. I mean, the level of detail. So kudos to to both GBTA and Orlando for doing that. But it sounds like this event, and through no fault of GBTA, will be like any other in terms of what I call the hassle factor, right? Used to be going to convention. The biggest hassle was I didn't book my hotel soon enough, and I'm going to have to take a bus, or I'm outside the close-in perimeter. This year, there's a lot more requirements in terms of what we'll have to do on site at the event. So do you think the hassle factor, not only for a convention, but for just events in general, is going to have an impact on the return?
Yeah, I just came back from my first 1,000-person plus meeting last week. And while there was, similar protocols, I would say, to what we're planning already, masked in the state and city where I was, that was required, and some digital tools required to get inside. I think that reassured most that it was worth the hassle to get into a face-to-face meeting, and everybody was informed and very much interactive and speaking to each other, and everybody was relieved to be back together again, planning the future for various areas of their industry that they were attending for. So I think also business travelers especially are probably more aware than others about mitigation of risk along the way for the kinds of work they have to do in getting from one place to another. I think it's also really, fortunate for us that airports and airlines have not really released the kind of mitigations that have been around. So masking still in place across all airports. None of that really changes, and everybody is fairly used to that by now with the tourism and other things that have been alive and well over the summer. I think, that said, corporate meetings and travel policy trumps all. And so the signs that we have had earlier was that September was a loosening point for that, and that with September, still many companies are returning to their office, even as some tech companies are moving that into 2022. The travel is still picking up. Over 50% of companies have told us that domestically they're already allowing non-essential business travel, and that goes for Europe, UK, Canada, US, and some Latin America and Asia. So I think we're certainly seeing that even meetings are allowable by almost 50% of companies for 500 and more. So hassle factor is what it is. I think we've been living with it for 18 months by now, and I think that wouldn't be the reason why someone wouldn't attend.
Good. Okay, glad to hear that. I like the optimistic approach. I think, I've said this. I wrote a blog post a couple of weeks ago about the hassle factor is just going to go up, right? It just what happens. It happened post 9/11, but people are pretty resilient. They get used to it. And so let's hope that's the case here. Now, you mentioned business travelers. And so I want to talk a little bit about, we've seen that the return to travel has been much quicker on the leisure side, right? Pent up demand. People just wanted to get out of their houses. I think we can all appreciate that, but that business travel is lagging. Now, I'd love to know, because you guys survey quite a bit, and you said there's an optimistic view of things looking forward. But why do you think it hasn't happened fast? Is it the hassle factor, the fear factor, the liability factor, or I don't know, has tech permanently changed the way people visit?
Yeah, I think while a few of those are certainly mitigating factors, I think one of the underlying practical factors is that without offices open, there's been no place to meet. And so you can have a coffee or a lunch in an outdoor restaurant in any city in most countries now. However, showing a PowerPoint and doing those Post-it note wall walk exercises that get you working together and building relationships are harder. So I think part of it has certainly been that there's just been no place to meet. I think that we'll also see a change in the way travel happens. Maybe those quarterly in-person 2-hour meetings won't happen in a face-to-face setting or in real life, as I like to say. Those might stay mitigated through these kinds of tools. That said, that once a year or twice a year strategic meeting might take a whole day now, because there's so many more things to go through, and there's the relationships to build. The customer facing side of travel and the human side of it, I think, is important. And I think the other thing that we'll see is new kinds of internal travel. So with the digital nomads out there, they still need to have some kind of corporate culture. And I've heard senior leaders talking about the need to make sure that their culture is maintained and it doesn't just become easy come, easy go in terms of staff, that if they find them easy, they work from home the entire time, and then they find it easy to leave because they don't have any kind of relationship within the company that keeps them sticky.
So some of this leisure travel might also be kind of hidden business travel where they're not getting reimbursed, but I want to go live somewhere else for 6 months. I can work remotely. My daughter's in that situation where she's going to live in Canada for a while, and you look at that and you say that's probably business. It's not business travel, pure business travel, but it is certainly business people traveling and then relocating, and then I'm going to work from a different place for some time. Right?
Indeed.
All right, last question.
And the one thing I would add, Tony, to that is that thank goodness for tourism, because it also helps get the bugs, the anxiousness out of that business traveler, because I think traveling alone by yourself in these kinds of times, for some people, makes them more anxious. So getting used to that through the tourism lens, I think, has been a good thing for the summer for all of us.
Yeah, and I think we have this permanent shift towards more business and leisure, the blur, especially the younger demographic. They like to combine a little bit of fun with their work trip.
Yeah.
So hopefully all of this will spur us to get back out there later this year. All right, last question. So you've been in the job now for a little bit of while, but what's been the most rewarding part of it so far?
Yeah, love that question, because first of all, it's been great to meet my amazing staff, and of course the great volunteer leaders that are across this plethora of chapters and advisory boards and countries where GBTA is active. But I would say that the biggest delight for me has been becoming part of this big picture policy advocacy that GBTA has been doing for years in the US and Europe, now with UK separate, and newly for us in Canada. And I didn't know, for example, that government policymakers lump tourism and business travel really all under tourism in as much as I know now. And it's really our opportunity to help policymakers see that business travel is different. It's more purposeful, it's more direct. Guardrails are pretty well established by companies for their business travelers, and that it's important that we not all be lumped within that same bucket of rules. So we know those rules have kept a lot of perfectly safe, risk mitigated meetings from happening, even while vaccinations have been rising like crazy. And we need to keep evangelizing about that now and into the future with all of those policymakers.
I'm glad you said that, because that has always been, I think, the most important part of the association, right? Advocating on behalf of us. We think of it, and it is a very big industry, but there's nuance to this industry that is completely overlooked, especially by politicians and folks in commerce. So glad to hear that is the most rewarding part. I would say it's the most important part too. So good for you. All right, let's move into something we call the Zeno zone. This quick hits. I'm going to ask you some questions. I want to know a little bit more about Suzanne, the person, versus on the business side. So, okay, number one, you have a major business decision to make, and you can only reach out to one person. Okay, who gets that call from Suzanne?
Of course, if it's about a business that I'm running, it's got to go to the chairman of the board or the president of the board. If it's, however, something about my career in this business world, it goes to my husband, because he's been an executive coach for years for a Fortune 50 company. No longer does that, but I have an in-house executive coach.
Look at you. All right, we didn't know that. Good for you. Well, that's good, and that's very smart. It makes a lot of sense. Wouldn't cost you anything. Well, it might cost you something, but we'll talk about that later. All right, next question. 3 dinner guests, anybody, any period of time, anybody in the history of time, 3 dinner guests, who's at Suzanne's table?
So I'm going to go the intellectual route with you. So first will be Angela Merkel, the outgoing Chancellor of Germany. Second is Malala Yousafzai. I'm probably mispronouncing her name, but we all know her as Malala. She was the Pakistani Nobel Peace Prize winner who advocates for education for girls. And the third one, going in the theoretical realm of the intellectual party, is Yuval Noah Harari, who is an Israeli historian and the author of maybe some books you've read, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, and the book Sapiens, which I found fascinating. And so getting us all together to talk about the past and the future of our great civilizations around the world would be something I would find really intellectually stimulating.
Very good. I'm going to admit it right here. I think my audience probably knows this right over my head. Most of them were over my head. I know Angela Merkel, the other two. I'm going to go have to do some research, but I will absolutely do that research. But good for you. I think it's going to be stimulating conversation. I would love to be the waiter and just dip in on that one there. Okay, now,
Absolutely.
Sounds sophisticated. So the next question is kind of an extension of that one. Are you guys in a dive bar or fine dining?
Sorry, fine dining for me.
I was going to say, there's no way you're taking these related to other than a fine dining establishment. All right, thanks for that. Last question, a little bit more serious, but give us something you see happening, a prediction, something's going to happen in our industry next 12 months.
I've been thinking that with the latest class of startups being scooped up during the pandemic, that with all the capital, the intellectual energy, and all of the great ideas out there, that there will be a new class of startups that are introducing themselves to our great business travel industry within the next 12 months.
Welcome. That'd be great. I'd love to see startups because I think there's a vibrancy that they bring. So good one on that. We'll be tracking it. Suzanne, it's been a real pleasure. I want to thank you so much for doing this. I know how busy you are. I know so much you have going on at GBTA. I want to wish you all the best with the conference. I will be there. I encourage everybody who is watching this to be there. Let's all get together and kind of celebrate the return to business travel with this great association. I also want to thank all of you for joining us today live. And we hope you join us again on our next installment of Zeno Labs Live. So this is Tony DeStalfo signing off. Suzanne, pleasure. See you out there.
Bye-bye.